The warship hung in space like a metal moon. Inside, war tactician Zrelkoth stood before a display showing a small blue planet. His gray skin rippled with satisfaction. This was world number 848. Another easy victory for the Valthek Dominion. For 3,000 years, the Valthek had conquered their way across the galaxy. They had crushed warrior races. They had defeated species with weapons that could crack planets. They had even subjugated a civilization that could manipulate time itself. None of it mattered. The Valthek always won. They had the numbers, the experience, and the cold logic of a species that never stopped expanding. Earth would fall in 72 hours. Maybe less. Zrelkoth's secondary eyes focused on the tactical display. The planet's defenses were laughable. Nuclear weapons, crude dirty bombs that poisoned the very ground they fought over. Chemical rockets that barely escaped the planet's gravity well. Radio transmissions that leaked into space like a child shouting in the dark. Pathetic, he muttered. His aide, a younger Valthek named Kormeth, nodded in agreement. The initial scans are complete, war tactician. Population approximately 8 billion. Divided into nearly 200 tribal governments. Multiple languages. No unified command structure. They still fight among themselves. Zrelkoth's mouth split into what passed for a Valthek smile. Divided prey was easy prey. His species had learned this lesson on 847 previous worlds. Begin standard protocol, he commanded. Intercept their communications. Map their military installations. Identify their population centers. We moved to subjugation phase in 48 hours. Kormeth hesitated. War tactician, there is one unusual element. The volume of their transmissions is excessive. They broadcast constantly. Entertainment, news, personal messages. The data stream is enormous. Irrelevant, Zrelkoth said. Assign a junior analyst to sort through it. Focus on military communications only. I want to know where their weapons are, not what their civilians chatter about. In a smaller chamber 3 levels below the command deck, junior analyst Teknor received his assignment with a sinking feeling. Communication analysis was usually simple. Military channels here, government frequencies there, civilian chatter everywhere else. But the humans were different. They broadcasted everything. Everything. Teknor's workstation hummed as it processed terabytes of human data. Television shows, music, something called the Internet, news broadcasts, movies, books converted to audio, video recordings of humans doing trivial tasks. It was chaos. It was noise. It was utterly unlike anything Teknor had seen from 847 other conquered species. He started with the obvious military frequencies. Human military communications were surprisingly sophisticated, though their encryption was easy to break. Nothing concerning. Standard defensive postures. No evidence they even knew the Valthek fleet was watching them. But then Teknor found something odd in the civilian broadcasts. Humans had an entire category of entertainment called science fiction. Stories about space, about aliens, about wars among the stars. Teknor pulled up a random sample, a film about humans fighting insect-like aliens. He watched, confused, as the humans in the story fought desperately against overwhelming odds. They lost cities. Millions died, and yet they kept fighting. The movie ended with the humans winning through cleverness and sacrifice. Strange. Most species created stories about harmony and peace. The Valthek themselves preferred historical records and tactical studies. But humans seemed obsessed with conflict. Teknor pulled up another sample. This one showed humans fighting machines they had created. Again, terrible losses. Again, desperate struggle. Again, human victory. Another film. Humans versus zombies. Walking corpses of their own dead. Another. Humans versus aliens who wanted to harvest their bodies. Another. Humans versus their own gods. Another. Humans versus reality itself falling apart. Every story followed the same pattern. Humans faced impossible odds. Humans suffered terrible losses. Humans won anyway, or if they lost, they died fighting. Teknor felt the first whisper of unease. He pushed it aside and continued his work. He cataloged human military assets, noted their defensive positions, and prepared a standard analysis report. The humans were no threat. Their technology was primitive. Their society was fragmented. They would surrender after the first demonstration of Valthek power. They always did, but the stories bothered him. Why did humans spend so much time and effort creating fantasies about warfare? Why did they imagine fighting aliens when they had never encountered any? Why were they so obsessed with survival against impossible odds? He decided to add a footnote to his report. Nothing major. Just a note that human civilian culture showed unusual fixation on conflict scenarios. Probably irrelevant, but worth mentioning for the xenopsychology team. Technor submitted his report and waited. Above him, the Valthek fleet moved into position. Conquest ships formed a blockade pattern around Earth. Troop carriers prepared their landing forces. Communication jamming arrays powered up, ready to cut Earth off from any hope of outside help. In the command center, Zrelkoth reviewed Technor's report. He skimmed past the footnote without much interest. Every species had its quirks. The important facts were clear. Earth had approximately 2 million active military personnel, scattered nuclear arsenals, and conventional weapons that posed no threat to Valthek armor. The invasion would begin at dawn, Earth time. The Valthek would demonstrate their power by disabling all human satellites simultaneously. Then they would broadcast their surrender demand in every human language. After that, they would wait for the inevitable capitulation. It had worked 847 times before. It would work again. Zrelkoth allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Soon Earth's resources would flow to the Dominion. Its population would be integrated into the workforce. Its history would become a footnote in Valthek records. Another world. Another victory. Another step toward total galactic domination. He had no way of knowing that 3 levels below, junior analyst Technor was still watching human broadcasts, and the unease in his mind was growing into something that felt uncomfortably like fear. Technor could not sleep. In the Valthek rest cycle, his mind kept returning to the human broadcasts. Something was wrong. He felt it in his bones, though he could not explain it to himself, let alone to his superiors. He returned to his workstation and began a deeper analysis. This time, he did not just sample random human entertainment. He studied it systematically. He looked for patterns. What he found disturbed him more with each passing hour. Humans had been telling stories about warfare for their entire recorded history. Clay tablets from 5,000 years ago described battles. Ancient texts detailed military strategies. Medieval manuscripts illustrated siege weapons. Modern humans created entire industries around simulating combat. Technor discovered something called video games, interactive simulations where humans practiced fighting. They did this for fun, for entertainment. In their leisure time, humans chose to pretend to kill each other, kill aliens, kill monsters, kill anything that moved. He found human history records next. Every civilization, every era, every continent. War, and more war. Humans fought over land. They fought over resources. They fought over ideas. They fought over gods. They fought over insults. They fought because their leaders were bored. The analyst pulled up a human concept called total war. He read the definition with growing horror. It meant warfare where entire societies mobilized, where every factory produced weapons, where every citizen contributed to the war effort, where the distinction between soldier and civilian disappeared because everyone was part of the fight. Humans had done this multiple times. Recently, Technor found records of something called World War II. In less than 6 years, humans had killed over 70 million of their own kind. They had built weapons factories that operated every hour of every day. They had conscripted entire generations. They had firebombed their own cities to deny them to enemies. They had invented weapons that could vaporize entire populations in seconds. And then, impossibly, they had stopped. They had pulled back from total annihilation. They had rebuilt. And they had kept all the weapons just in case. This led Technor to the most disturbing discovery of all. Humans had a concept called spite. It meant doing something harmful to yourself just to hurt your enemy more. It meant fighting not because you could win, but because losing without fighting was unthinkable. He found a human phrase. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. It appeared in their entertainment, their history, and their military doctrine. Technor worked through the night cycle, compiling his findings. By morning, he had a report that terrified him. He requested an immediate meeting with war tactician Zrelkoth. The war tactician did not look pleased to be disturbed. His command chamber was busy with final invasion preparations. Fleet commanders reported readiness. Troop carriers confirmed deployment schedules. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Junior analyst Zrelkoth said coldly, "You requested this meeting. It had better be important. We commence operations in 12 hours. Technor's hands shook as he activated his presentation. War tactician, I believe we should reconsider the invasion of Earth. The humans are not what they appear to be. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. Reconsider? The Valthek Dominion did not reconsider. They conquered. It was what they did. Srelkoth's eyes narrowed. Explain, quickly. The humans have been at war continuously for their entire history, Technor began. They have never achieved global peace, not once. Somewhere on their planet, at every moment, humans are fighting other humans. Many species have violent pasts, Srelkoth interrupted. Civilization suppresses these primitive instincts. We see no evidence of major conflict on Earth currently. Because they are not currently facing an external threat, Technor said. But war tactician, they practice warfare constantly. For entertainment. They run combat simulations in virtual environments. They study historical battles. They write detailed analyses of military strategies. They create fiction about fighting aliens, and these fictions are wildly popular. Fiction is irrelevant, Srelkoth said dismissively. Is it? Technor pulled up a display showing human languages. They have 847 words for different types of conflict in their major languages. War, battle, fight, skirmish, clash, combat, struggle, each with distinct meanings. They have a more sophisticated vocabulary for violence than we do. This caused a stir among the officers. The Valthek prided themselves on their military precision. The idea that a primitive species had better language for warfare was insulting. They have nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Technor continued, his confidence growing. They invented nuclear weapons and immediately used them on each other. Then they built enough to destroy their planet hundreds of times over. They pointed these weapons at each other for decades, ready to end their civilization at any moment. They called it mutually assured destruction, and they considered it a reasonable strategy. Insane, someone muttered. Perhaps, Technor agreed, but effective. War tactician, they did not build these weapons as a last resort. They built them as a deterrent. They constructed doomsday devices to prevent war by promising that any war would end in mutual extinction. And it worked. They have not used these weapons in 80 years, but they still maintain them. They still improve them. They still test new designs. Srelkoth was beginning to look uncomfortable. What is your point, analyst? My point is that humans do not think like any species we have encountered. When faced with impossible odds, they do not surrender. They double down. They invent new weapons. They find new strategies. They fight harder. Technor pulled up human entertainment again. Look at their fiction, war tactician. Every story where humans face aliens follows the same pattern. The aliens are more advanced. The aliens have better weapons. The aliens should win easily. And the humans find a way to win anyway. They show these stories to their children. They celebrate these narratives. It is cultural conditioning for resistance. You are reading too much into entertainment, Srelkoth said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then explain this, Technor said. He displayed human military spending figures. Earth's military expenditure exceeds the entire gross domestic product of most Valthek subject worlds. They maintain standing armies during peacetime. They develop weapons they never intend to use. They plan for threats that do not exist yet. This is not a species that will surrender easily, war tactician. This is a species that has been preparing for us without even knowing we exist. The command chamber fell silent. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Srelkoth stared at the data, his confidence wavering for the first time in his long career. Finally, he spoke. Your concerns are noted, analyst. However, we have committed to this invasion. The fleet is in position. We will proceed, but with additional caution. Double the reconnaissance before landing. Increase bombardment of military targets. We will break their spirit before we set foot on their planet. Technor wanted to argue more, but he knew it was useless. The Valthek did not retreat. They did not reconsider. They conquered. It was the only way they knew. He returned to his station and continued monitoring human transmissions. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a thought whispered, what if the humans were monitoring them right back? Technor's worst fears were confirmed when the xenobiology team delivered their report. He sat in the briefing room with 24 other analysts listening to senior biologist Rental explain human physiology. What he heard made his blood run cold. Humans are persistence hunters, Rental began, displaying a rotating model of human anatomy. Their evolution is unique among species we have catalogued. They did not develop venom, claws, or natural armor. Instead, they evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A junior officer laughed. They ran at their food until it died. How primitive, Vrental did not smile. You misunderstand. Human endurance is extraordinary. They can run for hours without stopping. Their cooling system, this sweating mechanism, allows them to regulate temperature during extended exertion. Most predators on their planet, including larger and stronger ones, cannot match human stamina. Humans simply outlast them. So they are durable, another officer said. This does not make them dangerous. There is more, Vrental continued. Humans have a combat enhancement mechanism called the adrenaline response. When threatened, their bodies flood with hormones that temporarily increase strength, speed, reaction time, and pain tolerance. A human under adrenaline can perform feats impossible under normal conditions. Technor raised his hand. Does this response trigger when they face danger? Yes, and here is the critical detail. Humans can learn to control it. Their soldiers train to function under adrenaline. Their athletes deliberately trigger it for competition. They have turned a survival mechanism into a tactical advantage. The room grew quieter. Officers began to understand why Technor had raised his concerns. Vrental displayed footage of human soldiers in training. Observe. They practice combat while sleep-deprived. They simulate injuries and continue fighting. They train in extreme temperatures, hostile terrain, and psychologically stressful conditions. This is not warrior caste training. This is basic instruction that all human soldiers receive. How do their numbers compare to ours? Zrelkoth asked from the back of the room. Earth's current military population is approximately 20 million active personnel, with another 100 million trained reserves. However, war tactician, there is a complication. Human society has something called universal conscription in many regions. In theory, most of their adult population has basic combat training. In practice, if threatened with extinction, Earth could mobilize billions. The number hung in the air like poison. Billions. The entire Valthek military, even at full mobilization across all occupied territories, numbered only 340 million. They would not fight as effectively as trained soldiers, someone argued. Would they not? Technor interjected. He activated his own display showing human history. During World War II, humans fielded over 100 million combatants. Entire societies transformed into war machines. Factory workers became weapon manufacturers. Scientists became bomb designers. Farmers became soldiers. The distinction between civilian and military disappeared, and they maintained this for 6 years. He pulled up another image. This is called the Siege of Leningrad. One human city surrounded by enemies cut off from supplies. The attackers expected quick surrender. Instead, the humans held for 872 days. Over 1 million civilians died from starvation, disease, and bombardment. And they did not surrender. They chose to starve rather than submit. Insanity, someone whispered. No, Technor said quietly. Determination. War tactician. I have found 73 similar examples in human history. Cities that fought to the last defender. Armies that refused retreat orders. Populations that chose death over occupation. This is not aberrant behavior for humans. This is their standard response to existential threats. Vrental nodded. The biological basis is clear. Humans evolved as both predators and prey. They were hunted by larger animals, so they learned to fight in groups. They hunted dangerous prey, so they learned to accept casualties as normal. Their psychology is built around pack loyalty and sustained resistance. They are biologically and culturally conditioned to fight overwhelming odds. Zrelkoth stood and approached the display. He studied the human figures, the historical images, the biological data. His expression was troubled. What about their weapons? He asked. We know they have nuclear devices. What else? Technor pulled up a comprehensive list. Nuclear weapons is mentioned. Chemical weapons, which they have banned but still maintain. Biological weapons, similarly banned but not destroyed. Conventional explosives of immense power. Directed energy weapons in early development. Kinetic bombardment systems in testing. Railguns, coil guns, and war tactician, they have weapons they invented and then decided never to use. Why develop weapons and not use them? Because they were too effective. Humans created bombs that would poison their planet for generations. They developed diseases that could wipe out entire populations. They designed weapons that would make their world uninhabitable. And then they looked at what they had made and said, "This is too much," and they sealed them away. But they kept the knowledge. They kept the production capability. They could rebuild these weapons in months if threatened. The briefing room fell into heavy silence. Officers who had laughed at the primitive humans now looked worried. The conquest of World 848 was not proceeding as planned. "There is one more thing," Teknor said. He felt sick bringing it up, but it had to be said. Humans have a military concept called acceptable losses. It means they calculate how many casualties they are willing to accept to achieve an objective. War tactician. Human acceptable loss rates are 10 to 100 times higher than any other species we have encountered. "What does that mean in practical terms?" Zrelkoth asked. "It means that if we kill 1 million humans, they will not surrender. If we kill 10 million, they will not surrender. They will mourn their dead, and they will fight harder. Their history shows this repeatedly. Casualties that would break any other species only make humans more determined." Frental added, "There is a human phrase, 'You have not yet begun to fight.' They use it when an enemy thinks victory is near, only to discover the humans have hidden reserves of strength. It appears in their military culture, their sports, their everyday language. It represents a core human belief that the fight is never truly over until they decide it is over." Zrelkoth returned to his command chair. He looked older, suddenly tired. "The invasion begins in 6 hours. All of this information should have been compiled weeks ago." "Why was it not?" "Because we did not look for it," Teknor admitted. "We assumed humans were like every other species. We were wrong. Humans are not prey that will surrender. They are not predators that will negotiate. They are something else entirely. They are survivors who have been waiting for a worthy opponent." "That is absurd," Zrelkoth said, but his voice was weak. "We are not here to give them a challenge. We are here to conquer." "War tactician," Teknor said carefully. "I strongly recommend we delay the invasion. We need more reconnaissance. We need to understand human military doctrine better. We need to know what they are capable of before we commit ground forces." Zrelkoth was silent for a long moment. Finally he nodded. "Agreed. We will observe for another 48 hours. But we will not retreat. The Valthek Dominion does not flee from primitive species. We will simply be more careful." Teknor wanted to argue that careful might not be enough, but he had already pushed as far as he dared. He could only hope that 48 hours would be enough time to find a way to avoid the disaster he felt approaching. The decision to send the ultimatum was made over Teknor's desperate objections. War tactician Zrelkoth had consulted with the Dominion High Command, and they had been clear. Observation was complete. The invasion would proceed. But first, as with all conquests, Earth would be given the chance to surrender. The message was crafted carefully. It used mathematical language, universal concepts that any intelligent species should understand, prime numbers to establish communication, binary code to convey meaning. The ultimatum itself was simple and direct. "We are the Valthek Dominion. We have conquered 847 worlds. You are surrounded. You are outmatched. You have 48 hours to surrender unconditionally. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your military capabilities followed by forced subjugation of your population. Choose wisely." The message was transmitted on every frequency humans used. Radio, television, internet, satellite communications. It was repeated in every human language. The Valthek expected panic. They expected desperate attempts at negotiation. They expected ultimately submission. What they got was something else entirely. The response came 12 hours later. Fast. Too fast. Teknor's heart sank when the signal appeared on his monitor. The humans had not panicked. They had not scrambled to respond. They had taken their time, crafted a reply, and sent it back with disturbing confidence. Worse, the message was in perfect Valthek language, not translated through mathematical concepts. Actual Valthek words, grammar, even colloquialisms. Humans had decrypted every communication the fleet had sent. They had learned the language. They had been listening all along. Teknor opened the file with shaking hands. What he saw made his blood freeze. The message began simply, "We received your surrender demand. Here is our response." What followed was a complete analysis of the Valthek fleet. Ship classifications, weapons capabilities, shield frequencies, crew complements, Tactical doctrine, supply lines, everything. The humans had identified every weakness, cataloged every system, mapped every strategic vulnerability. Then came the second part, a compressed database containing 10,000 years of human warfare. Every major conflict, every tactical innovation, every weapon system, battle strategies from ancient cavalry charges to modern drone warfare. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a warning disguised as an education. But the third part was what truly shocked the Valthek command. The humans had included their social media responses to the alien contact. Billions of messages, compiled and translated. And the overwhelming emotion was not fear. It was excitement. Finally! Appeared in thousands of variations. Humans celebrating first contact. Humans joking about alien invasions. Humans posting images of weapons with captions like, "Been waiting for this." Humans sharing fictional stories about defeating aliens and adding, "Told you this would happen eventually." The message included trending phrases from human social networks. "Hold my beer" appeared 17 million times. The translators explained it meant a human was about to attempt something dangerous while intoxicated with confidence. "Let's go" appeared 34 million times. An expression of eager anticipation for conflict. "About time" appeared 22 million times, indicating humans had been expecting this. "Earth says hi" appeared 9 million times, often attached to images of weapons. Technor scrolled through the responses, his horror growing. Humans were making jokes. They were creating artwork showing humans defeating Valthek soldiers. They were calculating battle strategies. They were volunteering to fight. Some were disappointed the aliens had not landed yet. The final section of the message was addressed directly to the Valthek Fleet Command. The signature was bizarre. "From the internet with love. We have been expecting someone like you for over 100 years. We have written thousands of stories about this exact scenario. We have created millions of hours of simulated combat against alien invaders. We have trained ourselves through fiction, games, and cultural preparation. We have imagined every possible variation of this encounter. You analyzed our military capabilities and found them primitive. Correct. You observed our divided governments and assumed we could not unify. Incorrect. You saw our violent history and thought it made us weak. Wrong. Our violent history made us experts. We have been practicing warfare for 10,000 years. We have fought in every terrain, every climate, every condition. We have deployed every possible tactic. We have learned from every defeat. We have improved after every victory. We have turned warfare into a science, and we have studied that science more thoroughly than any subject except perhaps warfare itself. You have 48 hours to leave our space. This is not a negotiation, this is a courtesy. We are offering you what you offered us, a chance to avoid conflict. We do not want war, but we are very, very good at it. And unlike you, we have been fighting constantly for our entire history. You have been conquering. There is a difference. Conquering is easy when your opponents surrender, but we will not surrender. We do not know how. It is not in our cultural vocabulary. We have a saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." It means we would rather die free than live as slaves. This is not rhetoric. This is not bravado. This is cultural programming going back thousands of years. We have already wargamed this specific scenario. Your tactical doctrine is predictable. Your fleet composition has weaknesses. Your supply lines are overextended. We have identified 47 different strategies to defeat your invasion force. We have backup plans for our backup plans. This is what we do. We prepare for threats that do not exist yet, and now you exist. We are ready. The question is, are you? The message ended with a simple addition. P.S. Our nuclear arsenals are now tracking your fleet. Our biological weapons labs are active. Our chemical weapons stockpiles are mobilized. Our orbital defense platforms are charging. Our military personnel are deployed. Our civilian population is arming itself. Our internet has achieved consensus. If you attack us, we will make you regret it. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Choose wisely. Zrelkoth read the message 3 times. His hands trembled. Around him, the command center had gone silent. Every officer stared at their displays, reading the same information, coming to the same terrible conclusion. The humans knew they were there. The humans had analyzed their entire fleet. The humans had prepared countermeasures. And the humans were not afraid. "Sir," Cormeth said quietly, "we are detecting weapons activations across the planet. Missile silos opening. Defense satellites powering up. Military bases going to full alert. Sir, they are preparing for war." "They are excited for it," Technor added, his voice hollow. "Look at their social media. They are celebrating. War tactician in 847 previous conquests. We have never encountered a species that welcomed invasion. But humans are not afraid. They are eager. This is what they have been training for their entire civilization." Zrelkoth stared at the tactical display. Red indicators were appearing across Earth's surface like a rash. Every indicator represented a weapon system activating, a military unit mobilizing, a defense platform coming online. The planet was transforming from a peaceful blue sphere into a bristling fortress. "They sent us their entire military history," one analyst whispered. "Why would they do that?" "Because they want us to understand what we are facing," Technor said. "They are not trying to hide their capabilities. They are showing them off. This is psychological warfare. They want us to know exactly how dangerous they are. They want us to be afraid." "Is it working?" someone asked. Zrelkoth closed his eyes. For the first time in his long military career, he did not know what to do. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat. But the Dominion did not retreat. It had never retreated. 847 worlds conquered. 0 defeats. But looking at the data, reading the human message, seeing the eager responses from billions of humans ready to fight, Zrelkoth felt something he had not felt in decades: fear. The Emergency War Council lasted 6 hours. Every senior officer in the fleet participated. The debate was fierce, the arguments passionate, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Valthek Dominion would retreat. The xenobiology team delivered the final piece of evidence that sealed the decision. Senior biologist Vrental presented findings that made even the most aggressive officers reconsider. The human adrenaline response makes them demonstrably stronger and faster under threat, Vrental explained. But there is more. Humans have another mechanism called hysterical strength. Under extreme stress, human psychological limiters disengage. A human parent can lift a vehicle to save their child. A human soldier can continue fighting with injuries that should incapacitate them. These are not legends. These are documented medical phenomena. Furthermore, he continued, humans have something called spite structures in their military doctrine. These are weapons designed purely to ensure mutual destruction. If humans believe they will lose, they have systems in place to guarantee their enemy loses too. They will destroy their own cities to deny them to invaders. They will poison their own resources rather than let others use them. They will fight to mutual extinction if that is the only option left. The strategic analysis team added their own dire assessment. The human message was not bluffing. We have detected preparation for what they call total war. Every major industrial center is converting to military production. Their internet has coordinated a global response in under 12 hours. War tactician, they are mobilizing their entire civilization. If we invade, we will not be fighting 8 billion individuals. We will be fighting one unified organism with 8 billion cells, each willing to die for the whole. They have also demonstrated something unprecedented, Techner added. They broke our encryption. They learned our language. They analyzed our fleet composition, all in less than 2 weeks. War tactician. No species has ever accomplished this. The humans are not just warriors. They are extremely intelligent. They adapt faster than any species in our records. Zrelkoth listened to it all, the biological assessments, the tactical evaluations, the cultural analyses. Every piece of data pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were not prey. They were not even predators in the normal sense. They were something the Valthek had never encountered before. They were survivors who had turned survival into an art form. What are our chances? Zrelkoth asked finally. The tactical officer hesitated. If we commit to orbital bombardment only, we can destroy their cities. But their mobile arsenals will survive. Their submarine-launched nuclear weapons, their mobile missile platforms, their distributed command structure. We can hurt them badly, but we cannot eliminate their ability to retaliate. And war tactician, they have enough nuclear weapons to make this fleet radioactive debris. If we commit ground forces, an even longer pause, our simulations show heavy casualties. Humans will fight for every city, every town, every building. They have home terrain advantage. They have the numbers. And they have proven historical willingness to accept catastrophic losses without surrendering. Conservative estimates suggest we would need to eliminate 90% of their population to achieve subjugation. And even then, the remaining 10% would likely continue resistance. So we cannot win, Zrelkoth said flatly. We could achieve a Pyrrhic victory, the tactical officer admitted. We could devastate Earth, but the cost would cripple our fleet. We would lose 60 to 80% of our invasion force. The survivors would be too damaged to maintain control of the planet. And the humans would never accept occupation. We would be fighting insurgencies for decades, possibly centuries. Zrelkoth stood and walked to the viewing port. Earth hung below, blue and white and beautiful. 8 billion humans living on that sphere. 8 billion potential combatants. 8 billion individuals who had just sent a message saying they were ready to fight. And they were excited about it. That was the part that disturbed him most. The humans were not terrified. They were not desperately seeking peace. They were eager for this confrontation. Thousands of years of fictional preparation had made them confident. Their violent history had made them competent. Their cultural values made them unbreakable. Contact High Command, Zrelkoth ordered. Inform them we are withdrawing from Earth space. Mark the planet as species classification Apex Predator World. Do not engage. The relief in the command center was palpable. Officers who had maintained brave faces now sagged with released tension. They had come so close to the first defeat in Dominion history. Pulling back was humiliating, but it was better than the alternative. Prepare withdrawal course, Zrelkoth continued. All ships to battle stations during retreat. If the humans fire on us during withdrawal, we respond with full force, but we do not initiate further contact. War tactician, Technor said quietly. There is one more thing. The humans have already launched pursuit probes. Small, fast craft that are shadowing our fleet. They are observing us the same way we observed them. Let them watch, Zrelkoth said tiredly. Let them see us leave. Perhaps it will satisfy their curiosity. As the fleet began its slow turn away from Earth, one final transmission arrived from the planet. Zrelkoth almost did not read it. He had seen enough human messages, but curiosity made him open the file. It was not from a government. It was not from a military command. It was a compilation of messages from random humans, civilians who had been following the first contact situation on their internet. The messages ranged from disappointed to mocking to threatening. That's it, appeared multiple times. Humans who had expected more. We made a welcome banner with attached images of signs reading, "Hello aliens" and "Welcome to Earth." Please don't eat us unless you're into that. Run appeared simply thousands of times. A one-word threat that needed no elaboration. Come back when you're ready. For a real fight from someone who seemed to think this was a sporting event. Disappointed, but not surprised, from a human who apparently expected aliens to be cowards. And then, inexplicably, one message that was just audio. Aggressive human music with sounds of laughter. The cultural analysis team explained it was a victory celebration. The humans were celebrating before the fight even happened. They were so confident in their ability to resist that they considered the retreat a victory. Zrelkoth closed the transmission. He felt old, tired. The Valtech Dominion had just encountered the first species it could not conquer, and that species was barely out of its own star system. What would humans be like in 1,000 years? In 10,000 years? When they developed faster than light travel and began spreading to other worlds? The galaxy was about to become a very different place. 6 months later, Earth was officially designated as a prohibited contact zone. The Dominion updated its conquest protocols with a new rule. Any species that broadcasts fictional warfare scenarios is to be avoided. Any species with nuclear weapons and no global government is to be avoided. Any species that responds to invasion threats with excitement rather than fear is to be avoided. In practice, the rules boiled down to one simple guideline: avoid humans. Technor was promoted for his prescient analysis. Zrelkoth was reassigned to administrative duties for his failure to conquer World 848. The gap in the Dominion's perfect record was officially explained as a tactical withdrawal for strategic reasons. No one believed the official story. Everyone knew the truth. The Valthek had encountered a species they could not defeat, and they had run away. The legend of Earth spread through Dominion space like wildfire. Other species began asking questions. If the mighty Valthek feared humans, what did that mean? Should everyone fear them? Should they seek alliance? Should they prepare defenses? On Earth, humanity celebrated its first contact, brief as it was. The aliens had come. They had seen Earth's defenses, and they had left. Humans interpreted this as validation. They were right to be cautious, right to maintain their militaries, right to prepare for threats that did not exist yet, because one day one of those threats would be real, and humans would be ready. In the end, the Valthek learned what every predator eventually discovers. There is always something higher on the food chain. The Dominion had been apex predators for 3,000 years. But humans were something else. They were not predators or prey. They were the thing that hunted predators for sport. And the scariest part, the detail that haunted Zrelkoth in his administrative exile, was simple. Humans had defended themselves without firing a single shot. They had won through reputation alone, through cultural preparation, through strategic psychology. If that was what humans could do without fighting, what would they be capable of if they actually went to war? Zrelkoth hoped he would never find out. But he suspected that someone, somewhere in the galaxy, would eventually test humanity's limits. Some species would ignore the warnings, would think the Valthek were cowards, would assume humans were bluffing, and that species would discover what the Valthek had already learned. Humans did not bluff. They prepared. They practiced. They planned. And when the fight finally came, they would be ready. The last message from Earth, added to the Dominion's database as a permanent warning, said it best. We know you're out there. We're waiting, and we've been practicing. Defeat was certain, until battle-scarred human soldiers arrived. The message came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Earth's global defense network detected an unknown object decelerating from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Within hours, military bases worldwide went on high alert. Fighter jets scrambled. Missile systems activated. The world held its breath. No one expected the visitor to broadcast a message of peace in perfect English. People of Earth, we come seeking alliance, not conflict. Our civilization faces extinction. You may be our last hope. The alien ship, sleek, crystalline, and impossibly advanced, requested permission to land at a neutral location. World leaders chose a remote airfield in Nevada, surrounded by miles of empty desert. Commander HFY stepped from his ship onto Earth soil with 4 arms raised in the universal gesture of peace. His blue skin shimmered under the harsh sun. Eyes that looked like pools of liquid silver blinked rapidly, adjusting to Earth's brightness. Behind him, 3 other aliens of different species emerged, each more strange than the last. Frank Rivera watched from behind mirrored sunglasses, his hand never straying far from his sidearm. As the highest-ranking military officer present, the colonel had been chosen to make first contact. 20 years of combat experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, they told him these aliens were desperate. "Welcome to Earth," Rivera said simply. "I'm told you need our help." HFY bowed his elongated head. "More than you can imagine, Colonel. The Galactic Coalition faces complete destruction. The enemy we fight, we call them the Scourge, has defeated our forces in 17 consecutive battles. Our homeworlds will fall within months." Rivera remained expressionless. "And what does this have to do with us? Earth has never been part of your coalition." "That was deliberate," admitted HFY. "Your species was deemed too unpredictable, too violent for peaceful integration." A pause. "Those same qualities may now be our salvation." 3 days later, Major Samantha Powell stood in the White House Situation Room, watching the alien commander present evidence of the war. Holographic images showed massive mechanized swarms tearing through alien defenses like tissue paper. Planets burned. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years vanished overnight. Powell had seen enough war to last several lifetimes. The Northern Campaign had cost her half her squad and left a spiderweb of scars across her back. She had no desire to fight someone else's battle. "Why us?" she asked, interrupting Zixaval's presentation. "Your technology is clearly superior to ours. Your coalition spans hundreds of worlds. What can Earth possibly offer?" The alien's silver eyes fixed on her. "Unpredictability, Major Powell. The Scourge uses perfect battle algorithms. They calculate every variable, predict every standard response. Our military doctrine has become predictable. But humans," he gestured around the room, "humans fight like nothing we've ever seen." The president leaned forward. "Explain." "Your history contains over 15,000 recorded conflicts. You've developed warfare in ways our species never imagined. Where we seek order in battle, you embrace chaos. Where we retreat when defeat is calculated at 63% probability, you fight on at 99%. The alien touched a control, and new images appeared. Human battles throughout history. "We need your expertise. We need your soldiers. In exchange, we offer technology beyond your current development arc." 2 weeks of intense negotiations followed. The United Nations Security Council debated endlessly. Military leaders argued about risk assessments. Scientists salivated over the technology being offered. Through it all, Powell found herself assigned, as the primary liaison with the aliens, a role she neither wanted nor enjoyed. "They're holding something back," she told Rivera one evening, as they watched coalition representatives board their ship. "I can feel it." Rivera nodded. The colonel had gone completely gray in his 45 years, but his eyes missed nothing. "Of course they are. But I've reviewed their tech offerings. FTL travel, medical advances that could end most diseases, clean energy that would solve our climate crisis overnight." He sipped his coffee. "Even if they're not telling us everything, the deal makes sense. And if this scourge follows us home, then we'll face them here instead of out there. Better to have alien allies and their technology when that happens." The deciding factor came unexpectedly. During a demonstration of Earth military training exercises, Zixaval and his delegation witnessed a special forces team respond to a scenario where all their planned approaches failed. Instead of retreating, the soldiers improvised a solution, using equipment in ways it was never designed for. The aliens were stunned. Their translator struggled to keep up with their excited conversation. "What are they saying?" Powell asked their liaison officer. "They're saying this never would have occurred to them, that your soldiers just invalidated a core scourge battle principle by thinking incorrectly." 3 days later, Earth's United Defense Council signed the Alliance Treaty. Humanity would send military advisors and combat veterans to help the coalition develop new strategies. In return, Earth would receive technology and recognition as a full coalition member. Powell received her orders directly from the president. She would lead the first contingent of human military advisors to coalition headquarters, 100 battle-tested soldiers from various Earth conflicts, chosen for their adaptability and unconventional thinking. "I'm not a diplomat," she protested. "We're not sending you to be one," the president replied. "We're sending you because you've survived when you shouldn't have. Multiple times." The night before departure, Powell stood alone on the launch pad, staring up at the coalition transport ship that would take them to war. Rivera found her there, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "Having second thoughts, Major?" "No. Just wondering if we really understand what we're getting into." Rivera handed her a small box. Inside was a combat knife with strange symbols etched into the blade. "Coalition metal," he explained. "Apparently it'll cut through almost anything. Their gift to me, I'm passing it to you." Powell tested the edge with her thumb. "You're not coming?" "Someone has to coordinate from this end. The president wants me here." His eyes crinkled at the corners. Besides, this mission needs someone too stubborn to accept defeat. That's always been you, not me. At dawn, 100 human soldiers boarded the alien ship. They carried modified Earth weapons, personal items, and centuries of warfare in their collective experience. Most, like Powell, bore the physical and mental scars of past conflicts. All had volunteered, despite knowing they might never return, as the ship lifted silently into the morning sky. Powell thought about what HFY had said during their final briefing. "The Scourge believes our defeat is mathematically certain," the alien had told her. "Their calculations cannot account for the human factor." Powell checked her knife, then secured it against her leg. Defeat might be certain by the Scourge's calculations, but they had never faced humans before. And humans, as Earth's bloody history proved, had a habit of defying the odds. The ship accelerated, and Earth dwindled below them. Ahead lay the stars, a desperate alien alliance and an enemy that thought victory was guaranteed. They were about to learn otherwise. Defeat was certain until battle-scarred human soldiers arrived. Part 2. The Coalition headquarters orbited a gas giant at the edge of contested space. From the viewport of their quarters, Powell and her team could see the massive defensive fleet, or what remained of it. Ships of various designs and sizes floated in formation, many showing battle damage. The humans had been aboard for 3 days, mostly confined to their assigned section, while Coalition officials debated how best to use them. "They're afraid of us," said Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, watching an alien repair crew scatter when she approached their work area. A tactical specialist with extensive urban combat experience, Martinez had been one of the first to volunteer for the mission. "They should be," Powell replied. "They've spent centuries avoiding us because we're too violent. Now they need that violence, but they don't know how to handle it." A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal HFY and 2 Coalition military officers. One resembled a praying mantis the size of a man. The other had skin like polished granite, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "Major Powell, your presence is requested at the Strategic Command Center," HFY said. "The Scourge has been detected moving toward the Proxima defensive line. Our admirals wish to observe your tactical input." Powell nodded to Martinez. "Bring Captain Daniels and his team too. Time to show them what we can do." The Coalition War. Room was a massive chamber with a holographic display at its center, showing real-time positions of both Coalition and Scourge forces. Dozens of alien officers moved around the display, speaking in quick, tense tones. Admiral Krell, the mantis-like commander of Coalition forces, acknowledged their arrival with a curt nod. "The humans arrive at last. I hope your reputation for innovative warfare is not exaggerated." Captain Eric Daniels stepped forward. Before joining this mission, he had led Special Forces teams in 3 major Earth conflicts. A nasty scar ran from his left eye to his jaw, the result of a close encounter with an enemy blade. "Show us your current battle plan," Daniels requested. A Coalition officer manipulated controls, and the hologram shifted to display a complex series of formations and movement patterns. Powell recognized classic defensive postures. The Coalition, ships arranged in layers prepared to absorb the Scourge attack while protecting critical assets. "This is the same strategy you've used in your last 4 engagements?" Martinez asked. "With minor variations," Admiral Krell confirmed. "Our simulations indicate it offers the highest survival probability. And you lost all 4 battles," Daniels stated flatly. The chamber went silent. Even through their translators, the humans could sense the tension. "We suffered acceptable losses while inflicting maximum damage on enemy forces," Krell insisted. Powell stepped to the edge of the hologram. "Show me the Scourge attack patterns from those battles." The display changed, showing mechanical swarms moving with mathematical precision, probing defenses before concentrating overwhelming force at the weakest points. "They calculate your responses," she said slowly. "They know exactly how you'll react because you always react the same way." She pointed to a section of the Coalition formation. "You maintain perfect spacing here. When they hit this section, you reinforce from these reserves. which leaves this flank exposed. Admiral Krell's mandibles clicked in agitation. What would you suggest? Abandoning proven doctrine for what? Chaos? Controlled chaos, Martinez corrected. Unpredictability within a framework. Daniels moved to the controls, hesitated, then looked at the coalition technician. May I? After receiving permission, he altered the holographic display. The neat coalition formations dissolved, replaced by scattered groups with no apparent pattern. Distributed force application, he explained. Small mobile units operating semi-independently, but toward common objectives. No predictable reinforcement, patterns, no standard responses. Admiral Krell and his officers stared at the display as if it showed obscenity. This is madness. There is no cohesion, no unified defense. That's the point, Powell said. The Scourge predicts your moves because they're predictable. Change the game entirely. A heated debate erupted among the coalition officers. Their military traditions stretched back thousands of years, and humans were suggesting they abandon them on faith. The argument might have continued indefinitely if not for the alarm that suddenly blared through the chamber. A junior officer rushed in, speaking rapidly to Admiral Krell. The Scourge has attacked Outpost Vega, Krell announced. Our forces are engaged. The hologram shifted to show a small coalition outpost surrounded by Scourge vessels. It was a minor installation with minimal defenses, the perfect target for a quick victory. How long until reinforcements arrive? Powell asked. 6 hours at minimum, a coalition officer replied. The outpost will be destroyed long before then. Daniel studied the hologram. What personnel are at the outpost? A research team and a small security detail. No match for a Scourge attack force. Powell and Daniels exchanged glances. Let us help, Powell said. My team can deploy immediately. Admiral Krell hesitated. This is not a simulation, Major. The Scourge will destroy you as they have destroyed countless coalition forces. Maybe, Powell admitted. Or maybe we'll surprise them. Either way, you have nothing to lose. 30 minutes later, Powell led 20 human soldiers aboard a coalition transport ship. Each carried modified Earth weapons enhanced with coalition technology, assault rifles that could punch through Scourge armor, grenades that disrupted their communication systems. Captain Daniels reviewed the outpost schematics while the transport hurtled through space. The Scourge expects the standard coalition defense protocol, personnel retreating to the central chamber while automated systems engage. So we do the opposite, Martinez suggested. Move to the exterior. Take the fight to them. Powell nodded. We split into 4 teams. Hit them from multiple angles simultaneously. Keep moving, keep changing positions. Don't let them predict our patterns. The transport emerged from faster-than-light travel to find the battle already underway. Scourge vessels surrounded the outpost, methodically destroying its outer defenses. The station's shields flickered weakly. Get us in close, Powell ordered. The pilot. We need to board before those shields fail completely. The pilot, a 6-armed alien with remarkable reflexes, navigated through the Scourge formation, using the larger enemy ships as cover. They reached the outpost's emergency dock. Just as the main shields collapsed, Powell led her team through the airlock. Inside, they found chaos. Coalition security forces fell back in ordered retreat while mechanical Scourge drones advanced through the corridors. Change of plans, Powell announced over the comm. Coalition forces, hold your current positions. Do not retreat. Repeat. Do not retreat. The coalition commander, a reptilian officer with scales that changed color with his emotions, turned pale blue in shock. But protocol dictates... Forget protocol, Powell interrupted. Today we try something new. She divided her human soldiers among the coalition defenders, quickly explaining the new strategy. Instead of falling back, they would hold multiple positions throughout the outpost. Some would advance, others retreat, creating a confusing pattern of resistance. The Scourge drones, humanoid machines with weapons built into their limbs, continued their methodical advance. They moved with perfect coordination, each unit supporting others in a flawless attack sequence, until they encountered the first human-led defense point. Martinez and 3 other humans, alongside 5 coalition soldiers, had set an ambush in a maintenance bay. Rather than firing from fixed positions, they constantly moved, shooting from unexpected angles, retreating only to attack from another direction. The Scourge drones paused, their programming attempting to calculate this new threat pattern. That momentary hesitation cost them. Explosive charges that Daniels had placed detonated, destroying 3 drones instantly. Across the outpost, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers led coalition defenders in chaotic but effective resistance. Traditional tactics were abandoned in favor of improvisation. Maintenance tools became weapons. Environmental systems were repurposed as traps. 4 hours into the battle, Powell received the message she'd been waiting for. "Major," Daniels called over the comm, "they're retreating." Powell watched from a damaged control room as Scourge drones withdrew to their vessels. The ships disengaged from the outpost and vanished into faster-than-light travel. The coalition defenders stood in stunned silence. None of them had ever witnessed a Scourge retreat. The reptilian commander's scales had turned bright gold, a color Powell hadn't seen before. "Is this victory?" he asked, as if unfamiliar with the concept. Powell checked the casualty reports. They had lost 8 people, 3 humans and 5 coalition soldiers. Significant, but far fewer than expected. "It's a start," she said quietly. "Just a start." When they returned to coalition headquarters, they found Admiral Krell and his officers waiting. The mood had changed. The dismissive skepticism was gone, replaced by cautious hope. "The Scourge retreated," Krell stated. "This has not happened before." Powell nodded. "They retreated because they couldn't predict our actions. Their algorithms failed." Krell's massive compound eyes studied her. "Teach us," he said simply. And so the real work began. Defeat was certain until battle-scarred human soldiers arrived. Part 3. Word of the victory at Outpost Vega spread quickly through coalition space. It was small, but significant. The first successful defense against the Scourge in nearly a year. Within days, the human soldiers found themselves training alien warriors in what Martinez had termed controlled chaos. 2 weeks after the battle, a massive transport ship arrived from Earth carrying the first official human military deployment. The 87th Expeditionary Force, 500 combat veterans led by Brigadier General Patricia Grant. Powell had served under Grant during the Northern Campaign and respected her unconventional leadership style. The general had earned as many reprimands as medals throughout her 30-year career, but her results were undeniable. "Quite the welcoming committee," Grant remarked as she stepped off the transport to find Powell, Daniels, and a group of coalition officials waiting. Tall and lean with close-cropped gray hair, Grant carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen the worst of war and survived. "We've been busy," Powell replied. "The coalition is eager to implement human tactics across their defense network." "And how's that going?" Powell glanced at the coalition representatives. "They're trying. Some concepts don't translate well. Thousands of years of military tradition are hard to unlearn." Grant nodded. "Then we'll just have to show them." The 87th brought with them modified Earth weapons and equipment. Coalition technology had been incorporated where useful, but the core designs remained human, unpredictable, adaptable, and often deliberately crude by alien standards. Staff Sergeant Kyle Bennett supervised as his team unloaded crates of equipment. A barrel-chested man with a thick beard, Bennett had served 15 years in various conflict zones on Earth. His specialty was demolitions, making things explode in ways enemies never expected. "Careful with those," he called to a coalition dock worker who approached one of the crates. "Those are special presents for our mechanical friends." The worker stepped back nervously. Most coalition species still found humans unnerving, especially those like Bennett who seemed to take joy in destruction. General Grant established a command center in the quarters assigned to the human forces. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls. Coalition intelligence reports were piled on tables, analyzed and annotated by human officers. We need to be deployed where we can make the biggest impact, Grant told Admiral Krell during their first strategy session. Your standard defensive positions aren't working. We need to take the fight to the Scourge. Krell's mandibles clicked. AE, sign of agitation Powell had come to recognize. Our forces are stretched thin defending critical systems. We cannot afford offensive operations. You can't afford not to, Grant countered. Your defensive war is a losing strategy. The Scourge adapts too quickly. What do you propose? Grant pointed to a star map. Stronghold Epsilon 9, it's your last major defensive position before your homeworlds. We deploy the 87th there, integrate with your forces, and prepare not just to defend, but to strike back. Powell watched as Krell considered this. Coalition military doctrine had always prioritized defensive postures, minimizing losses while inflicting maximum damage on aggressors. The concept of a preemptive strike was foreign to them. I will consult with Coalition Command, Krell finally said. After he left, Grant turned to Powell. They'll agree. They have no choice. 3 days later, the 87th Expeditionary Force boarded transports bound for Epsilon 9. The massive space station orbited a lifeless moon, its defensive arrays constantly scanning for Scourge activity. It housed 10,000 Coalition troops from a dozen different species, all preparing for what many believed would be their last stand. The human arrival caused a stir. Rumors had spread about the victory at Outpost Vega. Some Coalition soldiers viewed the humans with hope, others with suspicion. They think we're savages, Martinez commented as she observed a group of tall, elegant aliens whispering while watching Bennett's demolition team unload equipment. We are savages, Bennett replied with a grin. That's why we're here, General. Grant wasted no time integrating the human forces with Coalition units. Mixed squads were formed, with at least 2 humans assigned to each alien team. Training began immediately, focusing on unpredictability, improvisation, and individual initiative, concepts that many Coalition species struggled to embrace. You rely too much on orders, Powell told a group of Coalition officers during a training session. In battle, conditions change too quickly. Every soldier needs to think for themselves while working toward the common objective. This contradicts thousands of years of military doctrine, one officer objected. That doctrine has led to 17 consecutive defeats, Powell reminded them. Time for something new. On the 5th day at Epsilon 9, Bennett's demolition team was assigned to reinforce the station's outer defense ring. While inspecting the area, Bennett discovered design flaws in the automated defense systems. These are too predictable, he told his Coalition counterpart, a towering rock-like alien named Drac. The Scourge will calculate their firing patterns in seconds. The systems follow optimal defensive protocols, Drac insisted. Bennett shook his head. Optimal is predictable. Predictable gets you killed. Without waiting for permission, he began rewiring one of the defense turrets. We need to introduce random variables, make them fire in patterns even we can't predict. Drac watched in horror as Bennett modified expensive precision equipment with what looked like reckless abandon. This is not authorized. Neither is losing, Bennett replied without looking up. By the end of the day, every defense turret in their sector had been modified. Some fired single shots, others bursts. Some targeted the largest threat, others the closest. Some purposely missed their first shot to create confusion. When station security arrived to arrest Bennett for tampering with critical systems, General Grant intervened. Let's test his modifications before we lock him up, she suggested. A simulated Scourge. Attack was run against the modified defenses. The results shocked the Coalition observers. Bennett's chaotic defense grid destroyed 83% of simulated attackers, nearly double the performance of the standard system. By the end of the week, every defense system on Epsilon 9 had been modified using Bennett's principles. Coalition engineers studied his work with a mixture of horror and fascination. Their perfect, elegant designs had been turned into what they considered a mess of inefficient, random processes. But the simulations didn't lie. The Bennett method, as it came to be called, worked. The real test came sooner than expected. 9 days after the humans arrived at Epsilon 9, long-range sensors detected a massive Scourge fleet approaching. Nearly 100 ships, including 3 command vessels, the largest attack force seen in months. "They know we're here," Powell said as she studied the tactical display with Grant and Krell. "They know something has changed." "Good," Grant replied. "Let them come prepared for the old coalition. They'll find something very different waiting." While coalition commanders prepared for evacuation contingencies, standard procedure when facing such overwhelming odds, Grant gathered her human officers. "This is what we came for," she told them. "The coalition has been fighting this war by the Scourge's rules. Today, we change the game." The plan she outlined was so reckless that coalition commanders attempted to override her authority when they learned of it. It was Zixval who finally intervened. "We sought humans precisely because they think differently," the diplomat reminded his colleagues. "We must trust them now, or surrender to the Scourge." As the enemy fleet approached Epsilon 9, coalition forces prepared for battle under human direction. Standard formations were abandoned. Defense systems operated on Bennett's chaotic principles. And for the first time, small strike teams prepared not just to defend, but to board and capture Scourge vessels. Powell checked her weapons and looked around at her mixed human coalition strike team. They were nervous, but determined. "Remember," she told them, "the Scourge expects you to retreat when their calculations show defeat is likely. Don't. That's when you push harder." The first Scourge ships entered weapons range, and Epsilon 9 erupted with defensive fire. The battle for survival had begun. And for the first time since the war started, it would not go as the Scourge calculated. Defeat was certain, until battle-scarred human soldiers arrived. Part 4. The first wave of Scourge vessels approached Epsilon 9 in perfect formation. They moved with mechanical precision, each ship maintaining exact distances from the others. Their attack pattern was familiar to coalition defenders, a standard envelopment strategy that had worked countless times before. But this time, Epsilon 9 did not respond as expected. Bennett's modified defense systems activated in seemingly random sequences. Some turrets fired immediately, others waited. Some targeted the lead ships, others focused on vessels in the rear. The chaotic defense created gaps in the Scourge formation, as ships took evasive action against unpredictable fire patterns. In the command center, General Grant watched the initial engagement with intense focus. "Now," she said quietly. "Launch, strike teams." Across Epsilon 9, small attack craft launched from hidden bays. Each carried a mixed team of human and coalition soldiers. Instead of taking defensive positions, they flew directly toward the confused Scourge formation. Powell led her team in a swift approach to one of the smaller Scourge vessels. Their craft was designed for this mission, small, fast, and enhanced with stealth technology to avoid detection until the last moment. "Remember," she told her team as they prepared to board, "move constantly. Never establish a pattern. Communicate, with hand signals, not radio. The Scourge monitors all electronic communications." Her team included 3 humans and 4 coalition soldiers, including Drac, the rock-like alien who had initially objected to Bennett's modifications. Now he checked his weapons with calm efficiency. "I never thought I would board a Scourge vessel," he rumbled. "In all our battles, we always fought defensively." "First time for everything," Powell replied. Their craft attached to the Scourge ship's hull. Cutting tools made quick work of the exterior plating, and the team slipped inside. They found themselves in a narrow corridor lined with pulsing mechanical components. The air was thin. Scourge ships maintained minimal atmospheres since their mechanical troops needed little oxygen. Powell signaled for the team to split into pairs. Their objective was the ship's central processing node, essentially its brain. If they could capture it intact, coalition scientists might finally understand how Scourge battle algorithms worked. Moving through the vessel was like navigating a living machine. Mechanical drones patrolled the corridors, their movements precise and predictable. Powell's team avoided most, silently eliminating those they couldn't bypass. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, other strike teams implemented similar missions. Martinez led a team targeting a Scourge communications relay. Bennett's group planted chaotic explosive devices throughout a large destroyer. Each team operated independently but toward a common goal: disrupt the Scourge's coordinated response. In the command center, General Grant directed the larger battle. Coalition officers were shocked by her approach. Rather than maintaining a unified defense, she split their forces into dozens of small mobile units that engaged, retreated, and re-engaged in unpredictable patterns. "The forward section has been breached," a coalition officer reported urgently. "Standard protocol requires reinforcement from Sector 7. "No," Grant countered. "Reinforce from Sector 3 instead. And not in standard formation, send them in staggered waves. But that leaves Sector 3 vulnerable." "Exactly. The Scourge will detect the weakness and divert forces there. When they do, Bennett's team detonates their charges in that destroyer." The coalition officer stared at her. "You're intentionally creating weaknesses in our defense?" "False weaknesses," Grant corrected. "Bait." Aboard the Scourge vessel, Powell and Drac encountered resistance as they neared the processing node. 4 combat drones blocked their path, weapons raised. Unlike the patrol units, these were designed specifically for internal defense. Powell signaled Drac, then rolled a small device down the corridor. It wasn't a standard grenade. It was one of Bennett's special creations. When it activated, it did nothing for 3 seconds, then emitted a burst of electromagnetic energy, followed by a flash of light, followed by a small explosion. The unpredictable sequence confused the drone's threat assessment algorithms. They focused on the device, attempting to categorize each stage of its activation as a separate threat. In that moment of confusion, Powell and Drac attacked from opposite sides of the corridor. The fight was brief but intense. Powell took a glancing blow from a drone's energy weapon, leaving a burn across her shoulder. Drac's rocky exterior cracked under impact, but he continued fighting without slowing. When the corridor was clear, they proceeded to the processing node, a spherical chamber filled with pulsing light patterns. At its center floated a crystalline structure that housed the ship's main computer. "Set up the extraction equipment," Powell ordered. "We have 5 minutes before the other teams begin their final phase." Across the battlefield, Martinez's team had reached the communications relay. Rather than destroying it, they attached a device that introduced subtle errors into the Scourge command signals. Ships began receiving conflicting orders: advance and retreat simultaneously, fire at specific targets and preserve ammunition, prioritize multiple objectives at once. The massive Scourge fleet, once moving with perfect coordination, began to exhibit signs of confusion. Ships moved out of formation. Attack patterns became disjointed. For the first time, the machine intelligence that guided them faced input. It couldn't reconcile. Bennett's team had planted their devices throughout their target destroyer and retreated to a safe distance. When Grant gave the signal, they detonated them, not simultaneously as Scourge defenses would expect, but in a seemingly random sequence over 2 minutes. The destroyer didn't explode catastrophically. Instead, it suffered cascading system failures that spread from section to section. In unpredictable patterns, its crew of drones, unable to prioritize repairs without a clear pattern to the damage, essentially froze in place, caught in processing loops. In the command center, Admiral Krell watched in amazement as the Scourge fleet's perfect coordination dissolved into chaos. "This is unprecedented," he said to Grant. "Their response patterns have always been uniform." "That's because you've always been uniform in your defense," Grant replied. "They evolved to counter your predictability. Now they face something their algorithms can't process: human chaos." Powell's team completed their extraction of the processing core just as the ship's backup systems began to respond. They retreated to their craft and detached from the hull as internal alarms blared throughout the vessel. "All teams report status," Grant's voice came through their comms. One by one, the strike teams confirmed successful missions and retreats. Not all had accomplished their primary objectives, but every team had introduced some element of unpredictability into the Scourge fleet's operations. The combined effect was greater than anyone had anticipated. The Scourge vessels, unable to establish a cohesive battle plan against such chaotic opposition, began to withdraw. not in the orderly retreat of a strategic redeployment, but in the disjointed manner of individual units making independent decisions. 4. The first time in the war, a major Scourge fleet retreated without achieving its objective. As Powell's team returned to Epsilon 9, she watched through the viewports as Scourge vessels disappeared into faster-than-light travel. They had captured invaluable technology and intelligence, but the true victory was more significant. They had proven that the Scourge could be defeated. In the medical bay, Powell winced as a coalition medic treated her shoulder wound. Lieutenant Martinez sat nearby having her own injuries tended to. Think they'll come back with a new strategy? Martinez asked. Powell nodded. They'll adapt. That's what they do. So will we, Martinez replied with a tired smile. That's what we do. Throughout Epsilon 9, similar scenes played out. Human and coalition soldiers celebrated their victory, tended their wounds, and prepared for the next battle. The cost had been high, nearly 100 dead and many more wounded. But for the first time since the war began, there was genuine hope. In the command center, Grant and Krell reviewed the battle data. Your methods are... Krell seemed to search for the right word. Disturbing, but effective. Grant nodded. Humans learned warfare the hard way, fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to think like the enemy because we've been the enemy. What happens now? Now, Grant said, studying the star map, we take the fight to them. Defeat was certain, until battle-scarred human soldiers arrived. Part 5. 3 months after the Battle of Epsilon 9, the war had changed completely. The Scourge no longer advanced with unstoppable certainty. Instead, they hesitated, pulled back, and repeatedly altered their strategies, a clear sign that their perfect battle algorithms had been compromised. The captured processing core from Powell's mission had proven invaluable. Coalition scientists working with human engineers had decoded enough of the Scourge programming to understand their fundamental weakness. The machines couldn't truly adapt. They could only modify existing patterns based on previous encounters. True creativity, true chaos, remained beyond their capabilities. In a large chamber aboard the Coalition flagship, Captain Lisa Morgan stood before a mixed group of human and alien soldiers. Once a communications specialist in Earth's military, Morgan had developed the breakthrough protocols that allowed humans and Coalition species to fight as unified teams. The Scourge expects patterns, she explained to the assembled warriors. Even when they face unpredictability, they search for the pattern within the chaos. Our advantage is that there is no pattern. Each of you makes independent decisions based on training and instinct. A tall insectoid Coalition officer raised a limb. But how do we coordinate without patterns? How do we avoid working against each other? Morgan smiled. That's what these new training exercises are for. You'll learn to sense the flow of battle, to support your comrades without following predictable protocols. What had begun as a desperate, defensive alliance had evolved into something unprecedented, a joint military structure that combined Coalition technology with human tactical innovation. Mixed species units trained together, learning each other's strengths and adapting to different physiologies and thought processes. General Grant had established what she called adaptive thinking as the core of the new military doctrine. Every soldier, regardless of species, was taught to question standard responses, to consider multiple approaches to each situation, and to embrace controlled chaos. On a reclaimed Coalition world, Sergeant Alan Russell watched as his trainees, a mix of humans and 7 alien species, worked through a complex scenario. Once a simple infantry soldier, Russell now found himself responsible for training the next generation of officers in human combat techniques. You're still thinking linearly, he told a 4-armed Coalition cadet who had approached a problem with textbook tactics. The Scourge will calculate that response in seconds. What would they never expect you to do? The cadet considered the question, then suggested a solution so unorthodox that Russell laughed out loud. Perfect, he said. Absolutely perfect. They'd never see that coming. Throughout Coalition space, humanity's influence spread. Ships were redesigned with unpredictable defense patterns. Communication systems introduced random variables to prevent Scourge interception. Even civilian structures incorporated elements of controlled chaos to confuse Scourge targeting systems. On Earth, factories worked constantly to produce the weapons and equipment needed for the war effort. What had begun as a small military advisory mission had expanded into humanity's first interstellar conflict. People who had never imagined leaving their planet now found themselves traveling to distant stars to fight alongside alien allies. India, the Coalition Command Center. Powell studied the strategic display with General Grant and Admiral Krell. The map of known space had changed dramatically. Areas once controlled by the Scourge now showed as contested or reclaimed. The offensive is succeeding beyond our projections, Krell admitted. His manner had changed over the months of working with humans. He still maintained Coalition precision in his appearance and speech, but had adopted human expressions and gestures when appropriate. We've pushed them back to their core systems, Grant agreed. But the final phase will be the hardest. They're consolidating their forces around their central processing hub. The hub was the heart of the Scourge, a massive space station where their primary consciousness resided. All Scourge units throughout the galaxy received their basic programming from this central source. Coalition intelligence had only recently confirmed its location, deep within Scourge territory. If we destroy the hub, do we end the war? Powell asked. Not entirely, Krell replied. Individual Scourge units would continue to function based on their existing programming, but they would lose their ability to adapt and coordinate on a galactic scale. They'd be isolated machines instead of a unified intelligence, Grant said. Much easier to deal with. The plan they developed was the most ambitious yet. A joint assault force would penetrate Scourge defenses and reach the central hub, while Coalition ships engaged the main Scourge fleet. Human-led strike teams would board the hub itself. We'll need our best people for this, Grant said. Powell, you'll lead the primary insertion team. Powell nodded. After months of combat against the Scourge, she'd earned the respect of both human and Coalition forces. The scars on her body had multiplied, but her resolve had only strengthened. Martinez will handle communications disruption. Bennett's team will create the distractions we need. Morgan will coordinate between all teams and the fleet. Preparations for the final assault took weeks. Every detail was planned, then deliberately modified to introduce elements of unpredictability. Coalition ships were repainted in irregular patterns. Communication frequencies were set to change at random intervals. Even the timing of the attack was decided by a random number generator. The night before the assault, Powell found herself unable to sleep. She walked the corridors of the flagship, eventually making her way to the observation deck. The vast sweep of stars stretched before her, billions of points of light in the darkness. She wasn't surprised when General Grant joined her. Having doubts? Grant asked quietly. Powell shook her head. Not doubts, just perspective. A year ago I was on Earth recovering from the Northern Campaign, wondering if I'd ever find purpose again. And now you're leading the final assault against a machine intelligence that threatened to wipe out countless species. Grant smiled. Life takes strange turns. Do you think we'll win tomorrow? Grant considered the question. The Scourge would calculate our chances at less than 20%, but they still don't understand humans. We've won with worse odds. The assault began precisely at 031 hours, a time selected specifically because it held no tactical significance. The Coalition fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, then immediately dispersed into seemingly random patterns that the Scourge couldn't predict. Powell's strike team launched during the initial confusion. Their ship was small, heavily modified with stealth technology, and programmed to fly an erratic course through the battlefield. Bennett's team created a series of spectacular diversions, ships exploding in cascading patterns, debris fields that hit approaching vessels, decoys that drew Scourge fire. The battle was the largest of the war. Thousands of ships engaged across a vast area of space. But unlike previous conflicts, this one had no fixed lines, no standard formations. Human and Coalition vessels moved in constant, unpredictable patterns, never staying in one place long, enough for the Scourge to target effectively. Powell's team reached the hub during the height of the battle. They attached to its outer shell and cut their way inside. The interior was unlike any Scourge vessel they had encountered before. A vast network of crystalline structures pulsing with energy and information. "Stay alert," Powell warned her team as they moved deeper into the structure. "This is their brain. It will have defenses we haven't seen before." Those defenses appeared almost immediately. Not just combat drones, but the hub itself. Corridors rearranged themselves. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Holographic illusions disoriented the team, but Powell had anticipated this. Her team had trained for months in environments specifically designed to be disorienting and chaotic. Where coalition soldiers might have been paralyzed by the constantly changing conditions, the humans adapted instantly and helped their alien teammates do the same. They fought their way to the central chamber, a massive spherical room where the Scourge consciousness resided in a complex network of quantum processors. Here the final battle would be decided. As Powell's team prepared to plant the specialized disruptors that would destroy the Scourge consciousness, the hub initiated its self-destruct sequence, a final attempt to deny the coalition victory. In that moment, all the plans, all the training came down to improvisation. The distinctly human ability to find solutions where none seemed to exist. Powell's team, working with a calm born from countless battles, reconfigured their equipment to contain the coming explosion rather than trigger their own. The solution wasn't in any manual. It hadn't been planned or practiced. It was pure human ingenuity, born of desperation and determination. When the Scourge hub went silent, its consciousness disrupted but contained, the message spread quickly through the fleet. The mechanoid enemy, once seemingly invincible, had been defeated not by superior numbers or technology, but by the unpredictability of the human mind. 1 year later, Commander Zix Val stood at a podium on Earth, addressing representatives from both human and coalition worlds. The formal alliance treaty was being signed, recognizing humanity as full members of the galactic